So with us right now on the line is Ferris State football coach Tony Annese. He is a Michigan Hall of Fame coach, probably one of the greatest father-son coaching combinations in history. And Tony goes back to has coached at Muskegon Catholic, Central, Holland West, Ottawa, Montrose, Ann Arbor Pioneer, Jenison, Muskegon, Grand Rapids Community College, and currently has been at Ferris State since 2012. And he has won everywhere he has ever been. Tony, welcome to the show.
Including that Kerwood Park there, beating you in basketball.
I knew there was no way that you could be on this podcast without mentioning that show. So go ahead, get it out of the way, give the story.
No, that's all right. I'm too old now to even remember. I just know that back in the day it was pretty easy to beat you in one-on-one. All you had to do was just sit back and sag because you couldn't shoot, and you were a dribble penetrator, and I just let you shoot and rebound the basketball and make shots on you. That's it.
It looks like my dad, he's not quite standing up to you a bit, but I know off record he's told me that you have absolutely no right hand.
Well, you don't have to when you've got somebody that's 5'4" guarding you.
All right.
Yep, touche.
That's enough of a memory. You're good with that. Hey, so first, why don't you give us a little update? You guys just finished spring ball. You had your spring game, I believe, this past weekend. How did they look, and what are you looking for this upcoming season?
Yeah, it was a great spring, minus the weather. The weather obviously was very challenging, but our guys, they're pretty well focused on going out there and getting the job done. So I thought all in all it was a good spring. We lost like 14 seniors off of our defense, and so going to spring, that was a big, thing that we wanted to focus on to try to grow guys into spots, and did a very good job of that. And our offense, we didn't lose that many guys, and we were just trying to build depth, and I thought we did that too. So all in all, good. We're knocking on the door. Our basketball team won the national championship, which is really great to see. And we've been knocking on the door for the last few years, and we're continually trying to grow to do the same thing the basketball team did.
You mentioned that you lost 14 seniors. You hear it all the time. You see it with like PJ Fleck, the row the boat mantra. What would you say your culture at Ferris State, what would you say it's predicated on? What would you stand for that makes you guys so successful?
Well, if he's got row the boat, I'll just tell you, our motto is in the fold. And for us, fold stands for our 4 core values, which is faith, order, love, and discipline. And just kind of talking about, faith for a second. When I took over in 2012, it was almost one of those things where I said we're going to do this, and I had to recruit really with my word and my word only, because there's really no truth of evidence. And so, it had to be a belief system or a faith that something special is going to happen. And then, we've been, one of 5 teams in all of college football that have won at least 11 games each of the last 4 years. So our guys have hung in there. We don't promise the world to them. We just promise them an opportunity to compete and to, play the great game of football. And, our guys have really relished in that opportunity. Our player development's been unbelievable. Currently, we've got 4 guys that are already in NFL camps as we speak. We expect at least 3 more, either to possibly be drafted in the next coming days or, getting free agent contracts. So we expect 7 guys being in NFL camps here shortly.
You talk about having 7 guys who might be going into NFL camps next year, and the work ethic that this group has already put together, looking forward to next year. And Jared asked about culture. How has today's political climate changed, or how does that affect what you do on a daily basis as a coach? Does it have any impact? Do you find that you have to address some of that as a coach where in the past never came up?
Well, yeah. I mean, first off, people are talking about diversity all the time, like they're living it, and I can say with our team, it's our reality. So there's some people that are bystanders to diversity, and obviously they may have respect for it, but it's a pretty sensitive topic when it comes to how people feel about one another, and so because of that political climate, we got to talk all the time about the realities of what our young people face from a day in and day out, from the far right or the far left. And then we have to make sure that our guys realize that, everything's good on the football field and everything's sacred with the brotherhood and love we have for each other, and that some of the, crazy opinions about, judging people based upon the color of their skin, or, that they're based on their socioeconomics or their culture or upbringing or anything of that sort. That's all, that's all something that society does. But, within our football team and our family, those controversial topics don't exist.
Tony, this is Matt here. I went to Grand Valley State. I graduated from Grand Valley State in 2008. So when I was there, Grand Valley was one of the best football programs in Division II, maybe the best, and they won a couple national championships while I was a student there. And so I was just wondering, when you took the job at Ferris State, Grand Valley was coming off of, I think, 6 straight GLIAC championships, and they were kind of running the show there in the GLIAC, and Ferris State was solid, but they were kind of usually around a 500 football team. What did it mean for you to have a team or a school, a program like Grand Valley State, to kind of set your goals to try and aspire to what they were doing and to compete against?
Well, certainly it wasn't even a consideration to measure ourselves to Grand Valley because, first off, what they had done, it didn't matter to us in 2012 what they had done. The reality is every season, you're focused on, that year. So, the past was the past with what Grand Valley had done. We didn't focus on them at all, and we didn't use them as a measuring stick at all. What I did do is, people asked me right away when I took the job at Ferris, being in West Michigan, how are you going to compete with Grand Valley? Well, we hadn't beaten them since 1999, so that was the least of my concerns. My concern was, hopefully our guys could grow every day, try to be better every day, focus on ourselves, and not worry about them and what they had done to Ferris for the whole century. And then we played them in 2012 and we beat them, and when even approaching that week, I said, let's not worry about Grand Valley, let's worry about Ferris State, and we went out and beat them our first year, and we've beaten them at least one time a year for the last 6 years. And so, you just can't, the reality is you can't just, worry about somebody that's got an established program. When you're trying to establish a program, you worry about just trying to focus on yourself and try to develop your team and the mentality of your team to really be believers that you can go out and beat anybody. And that's been our approach, and we've been able to be very successful at that approach.
Tony, certainly having that mantra of we're going to control what we can control and we're going to become as good as we can be regardless of what anyone else is doing. Is that something that you got from your father, Nick, and the way that he coached? I never got the opportunity to play for him, but I'm certain there are some things that you have used from his career. Can you share some of those items?
Yeah, no, I think absolutely. It comes from, Nick Annese and his approach every day. I don't think he ever worried about an opponent. I don't think he ever put someone on a pedestal. I think he just said, we're the Corunna Cavaliers and we're going to go out there and play. And that was true, and it always existed. There were always, his teams are always competitive. They could go out there and beat anybody on any given day. And in fact, in his very last year, I think he thought he had the best team in the state, and I think he would have played anybody that year. Unfortunately, the way the playoff system worked back then, Corunna didn't get in at 9-0, and that's unfortunate. But yeah, and then growing up with the three brothers I grew up, it didn't matter, I mean, you've played enough basketball with Phil to know Phil didn't care who he was playing against. He didn't believe anybody was as good as him. And, you were the beneficiary, I think, of the Phil Annese attitude, and that, you guys were able to win a state championship. But if you think back to when Frank Davis came into Corunna and assess the challenges that our program faced, I mean, it was horrible. And Phil's team and Georgie's team and that group of guys, I mean, they went to the regionals and they won 18 games, and it was one of those things where that's when the program turned right then, and that was a year after I graduated. But that mindset is we're going to go beat anybody at any time, and I think that belief system's important, because I think sometimes people put some mental limitations on themselves in regards to focusing on what somebody's done in the past, and if you're focused on what they've done, you're probably going to lose to them. Just the mentality. I see it every day. I watched it last night when LeBron James willed his team to victory. When he doesn't really have a supporting cast, and it's just the strength of trying to go out and be at your best and not look at any opponent like they're better than you. I think that's important.
I think it's a great mantra to live by and to certainly coach by, and I'm impressed that you gave some brotherly love out there. That was good. Hey, I'm wondering too. I know that you're a little bit different from many coaches nowadays. You take a look at someone like Bill Belichick on the sideline wearing some cutoff sweats on the side, and you still go with the tie look. Did you get that from your dad? Did you get that from Tom Landry, Dick Nolan? Who's your mentor when it comes to that?
No, it's in honor of Nick Annese. I've done it, for I guess 330 some games now, and I would never change that. So that's purely in honor of my dad, and I just started wearing a tie, thinking about my dad and what how he really approached his business and his profession, and wearing a tie to me was my way to honor him. So that's why I've done it.
Well, that's pretty cool. Speaking of fantastic coaches, which obviously you and your dad, Nick, were, I remember when I went to a basketball coaches clinic and heard Lute Olson from Arizona speak, and he said that he started out as a 7th grade basketball coach, and he said that he had faced coaches as a 7th grade coach who were better than some of the guys that he went up against in Division I when he was at Arizona at the time. Can you think of any coach that you've ever competed against who you believe is just top notch, but they're just simply under the radar, and maybe they just don't know about this person, whether it could be a JV coach, because I know you've coached multiple levels over the course of time. Is there someone who you just respect the heck out of, but they're under the radar?
Well, yeah, and football, I've been a head coach for so long. I was only a JV coach for a couple of years, but asking that question makes me kind of think about how many times people say, well, he's just a high school coach. And in the college football world, you see Jeremy Pruitt, head coach at Tennessee, high school coach, the head coach at Texas now, high school coach. And so you see this, the head coach at Arkansas now, high school coach. And so you see all the success high school coaches, former high school coaches are having at the college level. The head coach at Auburn, former high school head coach. So it's cool to see. But, there's so many guys that you think back, like, John Shillito at Zeeland West now. He runs a unique system, but he's just a great coach, and he's so professional, and he does things so successfully. I've coached against some great coaches. So I coach against Al Fracassa, Tom Mack. Those guys are just guys that could roll into the college game and do great things. I said that to Peter Stursum a few years ago when he was at East Grand Rapids, and I never coached against him, but I talked to him about it, and then he got the Hope College job, and all of a sudden, like, boom, Hope College is really good again. So, there's a lot of high school coaches out there that, could coach college football. And a lot of people say, well, they're high school coaches, so they've never really recruited. And I say this much about former high school coaches. You're recruiting every day as a high school coach. You're recruiting in your hallways. You're interacting with teachers. You're interacting with students. You're making sure that kids are feeling okay, that teachers are, they're doing well enough in their classroom with teachers. So high school coaches do like an extraordinarily amount of, extra things that college coaches aren't used to doing. And I think being a high school head coach helps you to be a college coach. And it makes you really ultimately, I always say, coach their heart, not their talent. And we've got that poster in our office, but we want to coach young people's heart, not their talent. So in high school, you've got to coach everybody's heart, because there's just not, you can't win with 3 or 4 talented kids in high school. In college, you recruit, so you got recruitable athletes everywhere. But in high school, you might have that right guard on the football team that's 160 pounds. You might have that quarterback like John Patel who couldn't throw it 30 yards.
You taught me.
You might have that, all of a sudden you might have that basketball team that, is really small. So you're playing a style of basketball where you're pressing 94 feet up and down. And so, those are all things that high school coaches have to adapt to, where college coaches, in my opinion, it becomes challenging. And the last thing is high school coaches are teachers, so they're used to being teachers. You sometimes listen to a college coach speak at a convention, and they don't even know, how to even really use technology to do a PowerPoint presentation and things like that. So those are all observations I've got between, guys that potentially could be great college coaches but really haven't had the opportunity.
So where do you think you've been able to have a bigger impact on your players' lives, as a college coach or as a high school coach?
Oh, as a high school coach, definitely. There's people always say, well, what do you like about the high school game and what do you like about the college game? I loved being with the players every day in high school. So, and I'm talking about every day. So, like for instance, our guys have taken exams next week. Today, being in the office, I see about half the guys, and probably next week I'm going to see about a quarter of the guys, and then I won't see any of the guys for the next 3 or 4 weeks till they come back for the summer. And so you're with high school kids all day, every day. You're taking them home after practice. You're making sure that they have lunch if they don't have lunch. You're making sure that they're studying for this test or that test if they need to. And if mom and dad have something wrong where they need your help, then you're there to help. The college game, my staff, we're incredible at taking care of young people, but the interaction just isn't at the highest level. Most of the time, I have to have my position coaches kind of monitoring my guys, and so I've got 125 players, so there might be 8 receivers, and my receiver coach has to manage all 8 of those guys, and so high school football, you're just like ingrained at a much higher level.
You talk about that and kind of that investment that you have with players, which kind of guides me into the next question. I look back on my coaching career, and oftentimes I see some of my players on my very first Corona team, which was in 1999, and we lost in the regionals, and I think because of something that I did as a coach. We came out and pressed Saginaw Buena Vista, and we're leading 19-18 at the end of the first quarter. And I thought that, all right, we can continue doing this all game. Well, we couldn't, and we ended up getting just dusted. So has there been a time where you feel you had a disappointing loss where you think there was something that you either did or didn't do that was the difference in the game that just kind of sticks out and says, oh, man, if I could only do that over again?
Oh, my goodness, so many of them. So, going back to, times where, you were around our program a lot, just going back to Montrose. So I was a young coach. I was a head coach when I was 26. I didn't know anything. I mean, literally, as I look back, I'm like, how did I even function And so I'll go back to, like, some of the talented teams, and not to say that, we weren't given great effort and our kids were playing hard and our coaches were coaching hard, but I would say, looking back, I think the 1990 team probably should have won the state championship. I think the 92 team should have won the state championship. And I definitely think the 94 team would have won the state championship. Just me being a little bit more astute on some of the things that I know now, just from an offensive philosophy standpoint. So there's a lot of those games where, like, dang, gosh, what was I thinking back then, And so, and then you lose some that, you just might not think through a process or a circumstance where, in 1997, we got a chance to kick a field goal, win a game, and instead of kicking the field goal, we fumble because I call two of a high risk of a play. So yeah, that happens a lot. But then, I could say the same thing about our last game. Losing to Harding in the quarterfinals this past year. You just, as a coach, you just focus on the losses more than you focus on the wins. That's just the nature of who we are, and you just think, gosh, if I was a little better, we could have won that game.
You talked about your philosophy. In high school, you ran more of like the traditional veer, and then I would say pretty much right as you stepped foot on Ferris, you shifted to more of a shotgun, spread you out, read option type offense. Why did you feel the need to make that change?
Well, it's always been with me. It's always been more about personnel than scheme, and so I've always and people are constantly asking me, why do you change all the time? Well, because my players change all the time. When I took over at Ferris, it was really quick to see I had like a man-child at quarterback, and 6'4", 241. He was adept at running the option, but he was more adept at running the ball downhill. And so sometimes when you're running an option game, you're dependent on the read as to whether you're going to have the ball in the quarterback's hands or running back's hands or the slot's hands. And in this case, I needed the ball in his hands a lot, and so we developed a system where we had a lot of predetermined quarterback runs, and it's very effective to do it that way. So, we still have all of our old schemes in play. I think they're always going to be a part of what I want to do in regards to at least having them, something that we can use if necessary. Being a triple option team forces the defense to spend, time in preparation to defend the triple option. So schematically, they at least have to have a plan for it. So I'll still maintain that throughout my career, but most of it is based upon what our guys are capable of doing. And so we've got some really good receivers. We've got some really good receivers. One's from Montrose there, Malik Taylor. We're going to get him the ball. So it's just like feeding the hot guy in basketball. You change your scheme somewhat when you've got a great player who can dominate the game. So that's kind of what we do.
Tony, you were talking about player personnel and player turnover and adapting to the players that you have. Some of the big news right now in Michigan, especially in Ann Arbor, is Shea Patterson, and if he's going to be ruled eligible by the NCAA for his transfer. I'm curious what in your opinion, what your thoughts are on the transfer rules in college football and the fact that coaches can kind of come and go as they please and take new jobs and are able, they don't have to sit out a year or anything like that. But if players feel the need to transfer, in certain cases they have to sit out a year before they can be eligible to play. In your opinion, is that something that you think if they change the rule, it could be bad for college football? And what kind of things does that present for a coach if their players can just come and go as they please?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. And it's a very controversial topic. First off, if a university is under NCAA investigation and the coach lost his job because of that investigation, I would say that every player on that team should be able to, leave without punishment. I just don't like the idea of, all of a sudden the player suffering because a coach cheated. And so, with Shea Patterson, I think he should be immediately eligible. Just my opinion on, Coach Freeze and what happened there. And I don't know all the details, obviously, because I'm not in the middle of it. But when the NCAA comes in and ends up, punishing a university because of NCAA violations, and I think that should be the case. Now, beyond that, I can't stand what's happening with the, with everybody moving all over the place, and now, graduating and leaving, university to go to another university for their last season. I can't stand that part of it. Fortunately, we don't have those situations, but I don't like the opportunity for young people to transfer. I see they're talking about, allowing kids to transfer more and not, taking a year of eligibility out. And I've got a bunch of transfers, but if a young person has to sit out a year and transfers, then that's the way it should be. I'm not advocating that we just open the doors for transfers at any time. One of the NCAA rules that I can't stand, and I think it's wrong, is early entry into a university after a high school 7th semester. They're taking away a kid's opportunity to play basketball in the winter or run track or the spring or play baseball in the spring or, go to prom and those kind of things. I think it's just wrong. I don't think we should hurry kids off to, have them leave their mom and dad to go to some big-time Division I school, their 8th semester, what would be their 8th semester of high school, in order to go to college early. So don't like that rule at all. I wish the NCAA would change that and say, no more of this, early entry into college, because sometimes I think we're forcing kids to grow up too fast and they're not enjoying, the greatness of what high school, participation in sports and just being a high school student with your family. I think that's important.
I like that old school approach.
Yep.
So here's a good question. So on you run the no huddle offense, and I notice at your games that you have sideline boards where you hold for like play calls. And I was just curious if there's any way we could get a 3-point podcast one made. But before you answer, as you know, but as the readers might not know, or as the listeners might not know, I currently mow your mom's lawn. And if you were able to do that, I would be willing to mow entirely for free. What do you think?
Oh, you don't want to do that, man. My mom wants you to mow it every other day. It's too much work.
Oh, no, it's awesome. I love it. She's the nicest person I know.
All right, Tony, anything else regarding the NFL draft, maybe where you're hoping that some of your players are going to end up?
I'm just hoping one of them gets drafted. It's tough, First off, the scrutiny for just the average fan. They have no idea how these guys are scrutinized, from, when did they get this tattooed, what their grade was in algebra, and what's their mom like. I mean, I was at, our two of our guys went to Michigan's Pro Day. We're talking about, the two guys that I had at the Pro Day, and one of the Pro Scouts says, how's Malik doing? And he's talking about Malik Taylor, who's a junior receiver. I said, he's doing really well. And he says, well, how is his, and he stated a girl's name. And I'm like, who is that? He goes, well, that's his girlfriend. I don't even know her name, So these Pro Scouts know so much about these guys. It's just incredible. And the scrutiny is just amazing, They monitor every bit of, everything with these guys. And so, our two guys, Steeler and Tavi Thomas, they went to the Lions, basically the state prospect the Lions had, and I think there were 24 kids there, and there was only 4 that went in to meet the GM, and 2 of them were my guys. And so, I think my guys are thought of quite highly, but it's tough to get drafted, because a lot of guys, honestly, are trying to hide these, people from smaller schools. So, like maybe the Buffalo Bills, for example, might say, hey, coach, we really like this kid, but, we're trying to keep it down so that people don't want to draft him, because if they can hold off and sign him as a free agent, it's better than they can use their draft picks for somebody else. So that's kind of the game for, Division II guys is, you kind of say, hey, they might get drafted, but we're hoping they don't, so we can sign them as a free agent kind of deal. So we'll see what happens. But, both of my guys at Michigan's Pro Day, Sealer tested, better than, any Michigan player, and Tavi ran a 4.38, which was the fastest of anybody at the whole Pro Day. So, they're skilled, and they've got a good chance to make a team, but God knows how the next couple of days will go.
Right. Well, I know they've had certainly good background from you, and they've learned how to compete, and I'm certain that they will represent you and Ferris State University very well. I want to thank you again, Tony, for joining us here on our one-on-one segment of the 3 Point Podcast. We'll let you get back to your better half and finish your dinner, and best of luck next year, and we're certain that we're going to read good things about you.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me, and just a little shout-out. Cooper Clapp is doing a great job at Ferris, and I just wanted you guys to know that before I signed off.
Yeah, just let me know if you need me to toughen them up or anything.
Toughen them up, man. Toughen them up.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, thanks, guys.
Hey, Tony, I just wanted to say real quick, I grew up going to all the football games at Nick and East Field, and I played on Nick and East Field my whole life too. So it's really cool to have the chance to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.